Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation and final part to What's Your Type? Izuku waved at the camera before the sounds of the studio came rushing back in at them. Izuku exhaled loudly and slouched as the cameras went off. Hanazawa flashed towards Izuku at that very instant, spiking his heart rate as he nearly jumped out of his skin when her face appeared in front of him. "You boys," she said slowly, mouth stretching open into a wide grin, "are killing this. Did you practice beforehand? Are you really this close just from being childhood friends? I heard that you two weren't all that close during high school." "Let the idiot breathe. Don't you have any concept of personal fucking space?" Kacchan's voice came from directly above him, and he looked up to see him standing in front of him, glaring daggers at the host. Hanazawa laughed again, the sound so oddly airy that Izuku wasn't sure if it was actually coming from her. "Oh, I like you, Kacchan. I didn't mean to frighten your precious friend. I'm just really excited right now. My sweet Kaji just told me that viewership of tonight's episode is the highest it's ever been. Not including the episode where All Might and Endeavor played darts blindfolded, of course. So I'm expecting great things from you two." When Hanazawa moved to track down Kaji, to no doubt harass him with her boundless energy, Izuku beamed up at Kacchan. "We're actually doing pretty good," he said, standing up so he can stretch his muscles a little. "Fucking obviously. It's kind of the whole—" "Deku-kun!" Izuku whipped his head around to see Uraraka, his mother, Kirishima, and Ashido waving them over from the front row of the audience stands. Kacchan grumbled some obscenities at Uraraka for interrupting, which Izuku countered with an unimpressed look, before bounding up to them, with a wide smile on his face. From her elevated position, Inko towered over her son with glossy eyes. She clasped one of Izuku's hands while Uraraka grabbed another, and shot a watery smile down at him. "Izu, you have no idea how proud I am of you right now. It's so wonderful to see the two of you get along so well. Oh, my baby is actually on television." "Yeah, dude, this is manly as hell," Kirishima said, flashing him a thumbs up. Ashido, who was standing next to him, flung herself forward at Kacchan to hug him by the shoulders. Kacchan swore, having to practically hold Ashido up as she threw all of her weight at him. "Bakuho, you're doing amazing, sweetie," she laughed as she leaned down to practically strangle the blonde. "Would you be able to answer questions about me? Hey, what do you think my strangest fear is?" "Get off me, Pinky," he snarled, trying to loosen her ironclad grip on his neck. "Answer me!" "I'm going to be your biggest fucking nightmare if you don't let up right now. I swear to God." Ashido just laughed again, breaking free from Kacchan only to latch onto Kirishima's arm. "The answer was straight people, Baku. Gah, he's so edgy. It's kind of cute, though, isn't it?" Kirishima snickered, before glancing at Kacchan's murderous eyes. He not so subtly placed his hands on his girlfriend's shoulders before moving her in front of him as a precautionary wall of defense. Izuku snorted. "Yeah, he is," he agreed absent-mindedly, lips twitching upwards into a soft smile. For a brief second, he tilted his head in confusion as all pairs of eyes latched onto him, before realizing what he had just said. "What?" Kacchan asked, sounding just as confused. Izuku didn't even dare to look at him, his eyes darting towards everything in the room except for him. Inko's cheeks bloomed into a soft pink when she noticed the look on her son's face. And oh, she thought, why am I not surprised? Izuku stuttered out. "I just meant—" "Deku!" Uraraka stepped in, eyes locked onto something on stage. "I think you both need to head back now." Izuku followed her gaze to the front, where Hanazawa was just finishing up with her hairstylist as the camera crew reorganized themselves into position again. He shot her a grateful smile, and squeezed her hand before pulling away to face Kacchan. "Let's get this over with, then," Kacchan grunted. Then, before he could think too much about it, Kacchan extended his hand towards Izuku and curled it into a fist. Izuku stared at it for a second with wide eyes before dissolving into a smile as he fist bumped him. "Here's to 10 out of 10, he said. Once they were seated and had a 5-second touch-up by their respective stylists again, Izuku drew in a deep inhale to gather himself as the cameras began rolling again. Welcome back to Heroes Rising. Currently on stage with us are the rising pro heroes Deku and Ground Zero, who have not only smashed their way through the rankings this year, but are apparently also on course to beating the show's record for the game, Do You Really Know Me?, on their very first go. We're in the home stretch now, boys. Are we ready for the 8th question?" Kacchan grunted in lieu of an actual response, as Izuku beamed up at Hanazawa. "Totally," he exclaimed. "This is super exciting, isn't it, Kacchan?" "It'll be more exciting once we win," he retorted, twirling his pen in his fingers impatiently. "Kacchan is so enthusiastic," Izuku muttered quietly. At least the crowd seemed to be eating up their dynamic, though. "All right, heroes, on to question number 8. What does your partner think is your least flattering color to wear?" Izuku grimaced at Kacchan's very unappealing scowl. He didn't look camera-friendly at all. Again. Not that Izuku had ever expected him to. "What kind of dumb question is that? Does this look like a fashion runway show?" "I think it's interesting," Izuku interjected. "And I know the answer to it too, so I like it even more because of that." The blonde glared at him silently before resigning himself to just writing down his answer, mumbling, "Nobody asked for your dumb opinion," as he did so. Izuku laughed to himself because he knew that Kacchan's irritation was going to bleed into his answer, which meant his answer was definitely going to be a dig at him. When time was up, the camera zoomed onto Izuku's screen first. "Kacchan doesn't like to wear yellow because he thinks it clashes with his hair," was written at the top, and "Kacchan thinks every color is unflattering on me" at the bottom. Kacchan's board sported a very curt yellow at the bottom, and "bold of anyone to assume Deku can wear flattering colors" was scribbled quickly at the top, as if he had been running out of time to get it down. Hanazawa was laughing even as she said, "That's mean, Bakugo." Turning to Izuku, her eyebrows rose to her hairline at what was written on his board. "Oh, so Bakugo cares about his appearance, then?" Izuku snorted. It's more like his parents are both fashion designers, so I guess he always had an eye for this kind of stuff." "Oh!" Hanazawa exclaimed, turning to face Kacchan, who was staring at Deku with a betrayed expression. "You know, you could have made a total fortune out of being a model working for your parents. At least you know what to do if heroing doesn't work out for you." "What?" "She's joking, Kacchan. Everyone knows that you're destined to be a hero." Kacchan sat back down, since he had apparently almost risen out of his seat, grumbling something about, "Damn right he was," and "Who does this lady think she is to even suggest something so stupid?" Unfazed by the near outburst, the airy host continued without a hitch. "Okay, let's see." Hanazawa pretended to skim the page as Kaji's voice filtered into her ear. She and Kaji had agreed during the break that the questions on the page were apparently easy for this freak duo, and that they needed to spice things up a little so that the audience didn't think it was all staged. But at the same time, they shouldn't be hard enough that the pair of them broke the streak either. Imagine a full, perfect score on Heroes Rising. It's never been done before, so ratings would absolutely go through the roof. "I'm literally on Google right now," Kaji began, and Hanazawa suppressed the need to yell at him. "But hey, this looks good. Wait, no, this one. Not too hard, not too easy. Ask them about the one secret they know about each other which nobody else knows. They're childhood friends. They'll figure it out." It's a good thing Kaji talked like an auctioneer on crack, because Hanazawa would have killed anyone else who took so long to give her directions. Question number 9. What is one secret that your partner has personally told you that nobody else knows? Kacchan and Izuku exchanged a glance. One for all, Izuku thought instantly. Then no, All Might knew about that, as did Recovery Girl, and all the others too. Besides, Kacchan had figured that out all on his own. Izuku allowed himself a second to admire Kacchan's observational skills before getting back to the task at hand. Childhood memories didn't really count either, right? Knowing that Kacchan usually woke up in the night to pee wasn't a secret that he had personally told him. It was just a fact that he had come to know. 3 memories flickered into his mind at the speed of light. Any and all memories involving Kacchan always sat somehow at the forefront of his mind for easy access. 1. Why was I the one who ended All Might? Izuku shivered, pushing that memory aside. Nobody apart from him needed to know about that. The second. I'm gay. He had to fight the rising blush to his cheeks. When he made eye contact with Kacchan and noticed the red tips of his ears, they both looked hastily away as they realized what the other was thinking. The third one was, luckily, so much more innocent. Endearing, even. Or maybe Izuku's thoughts were an unreliable narrator because he happened to find just about anything that Kacchan did as endearing. Kacchan was tapping his finger on the coffee table in the common room, a whirlwind of books and papers scattered around them. Look, I'm not the best at history, all right? Like, who gives a fuck about some old man who kicked the bucket hundreds of years ago? Just help me out with this shit. You're asking me to help you? Kacchan, are you ill? Shut the fuck up before I change my mind. If I tell anyone else about this, they wouldn't let me live it down. Bad at history, Izuku wrote at the top now, smiling as he did so. Now for the hard part. The things that Izuku had told Kacchan personally were much too serious to be discussed on live television. Izuku's secrets were dark and dangerous things, bigger than the both of them, and just barely deep enough to wade through. And though Kacchan knew more about him than anyone else did, that was mainly because Kacchan could read him like a book in the same way Izuku could read him. There wasn't really a need to confide in him with words when he already knew. Oh. There was one thing that Izuku had told him. Izuku could feel the tips of his ears burning as he sneaked a quick glance at Kacchan, who was leaning back in his seat as he looked back smugly. Ugh, of course he would. Of course Izuku would take care to make sure Kacchan's reputation was intact, but the blonde would want to do exactly the opposite of that. Frowning, Izuku scribbled down his answer at the bottom quickly, conscious of the time he wasted in thought. Hanazawa signaled that the time was up, just as Izuku squeezed in the last word. When time was up, Izuku tried to hide behind his fingers as their answers revealed themselves on the screen. Deku, you sleep with a giant All Might plushie? To be expected from the self-proclaimed fanboy. The crowd went a little wild at that, bursting into their signature sounds of endearment. One audience member shouted, Detroit Smash, which led to a round of cheers and more laughter. It seemed that the All Might obsession never really wore down with the people of Musutafu, even after his retirement. I hate you, Kacchan, Izuku thought bitterly. When he brought his hands down to expose his face, he scowled at the blonde sitting across from him. Kacchan's screen read, He sleeps with a giant All Might plushie, followed by, I hate history more than I hate Deku's face. I just really admire him, Izuku said, trying not to pout. He wasn't sure what it said about him as the future symbol of peace when he still slept with a giant toy, but he had a feeling it wasn't a good one. Even though Kacchan had exposed him to the world, Izuku didn't have much time to feel mad about it. They were on the last question now, the moment they've been waiting for. Are we all ready for the last question? We have never gotten a full score on this game before, but our first-time rookies might just put every other hero duo in their place. We will be increasing the time for this question to 45 seconds, just because this is the first time this has ever happened, and we think you both earned it. Can we get one final cheer for heroes Ground Zero and Deku, who have played phenomenally this entire time? Izuku drowned out the cheers as he smiled confidently at Kacchan. They managed to get this far, and he was feeling much more excited than he was nervous for once. They were going to get 8 million yen. Okay then, here we go. Hanazawa paused for dramatic effect as the lights dimmed and spotlights overhead honed in on their podiums. Izuku was surprised to find that the pressure of the spotlights didn't actually bother him now. What is your hero partner's type? A brief silence. Type? Izuku questioned at the same time as Kacchan. Hanazawa smiled at their synchrony, waving her hands at the camera as if to say, "Are y'all seeing this too?" "Yes, type," she laughed. "Like who would they date? What are they into?" For a second, all he heard was the hum of the air conditioner in the distance. Then, the blood drained from Izuku's face and he shot a panicked look at Kacchan. The blonde didn't seem to be faring any better. His gaze zeroed in on Hanazawa, as if he could will her to change the question to something else. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know the answer. Oh God, I don't know the... Time starts now. Good luck. Izuku gulped thickly, but his throat was tight, and the action was more painful than anything. The blank screen staring up at him was an exact reflection of the static in his head. Kacchan's type? That was something Izuku didn't ever think of. It's not something he had ever wanted to think about. Izuku knows he gets jealous easily, especially when it comes to him. Think, Izuku. Think. Okay, he told you he was gay, and Kacchan, he's focused on being the best, which means that he wants someone who can be on his level. Oh, right. Nope, not going there. This is no time for self-indulgent fantasies. Ah, he likes manly people? People who are strong. Someone who can take a villain down in one swoop. Izuku's eyes flicked to the dark audience. Kirishima is taken, though. Unless it's unrequited? No, wait. It can be literally anyone from UA. Wait, this is about his type, not who he likes. Ugh, I hate this question so much, but maybe it's a trick question. Maybe Kacchan just doesn't have a type at all. Izuku smiled gleefully to himself at the thought. Yeah, that makes sense. He's never expressed interest in anyone before. Wait. There had been a party in second year once. Izuku distinctly remembered Ashido joking about if Kacchan would ever tap that, and Kacchan had said, "Are you thick? Of course I would." Does that count? Who were we even talking about? What is a type? Is his type... I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think... Time's up. Oh God. Izuku fucked up. He fucked up. He didn't even think about his own type, which... Did he have one? It was a little difficult to identify what Izuku's type was when nobody could ever hold a candle to Kacchan, to his spiky hair that was actually soft to the touch, and his toned, sculpted biceps, and how his cupid bow lips were always tucked into a frown even when he was happy because God forbid anyone see him smile. Oh God. He fucked up. Izuku's podium buzzed pathetically from the lack of response. Blood roared in Izuku's ears from both the embarrassment and the flood of his thoughts. The crowd was silent for once. Just look at Kacchan's screen, Izuku pleaded with himself. His eyes remained glued to his own blank screen. Just do it. Look, Izuku. He knows you better than you know yourself, right? Obviously he would have guessed. His eyes flicked upwards. Kacchan was avoiding his eyes too, face uncharacteristically blank with shock. Izuku's eyes fell to the screen. Brown hair. There was nothing written at the bottom. Izuku's heart stopped beating, and then it took a dive into his gut. Brown hair? Where did Kacchan get that from? Finally, their eyes met, and for the first time that night, neither of them had any idea what the other was thinking, or what they were trying to communicate to each other. To be fair, Izuku wasn't sure what he was trying to say either. Sorry I don't think about what your type is because it makes my heart ache. Sorry that my sexuality is apparently Kacchan sexual. Yikes, at least Kacchan had got it wrong too, though. That was a small comfort. Inwardly, Hanazawa cursed. She cursed Kaji, most of all for thinking this question would be easy. Come on, what kind of best buddies don't talk about their crushes? Tell me you've never done that in a sleepover. Now look at them and tell me they've never had a sleepover. It's a good one, trust me. When have I ever failed you? To think they could have gotten so many views on YouTube for this. Should she fire him? Okay, too far, maybe. She's definitely not paying for drinks tonight, though. Ah, Hanazawa said finally, the disappointment evident in her voice even as she smiled reassuringly. Well, that's a shame, guys, and I thought you two would have had this in the bag. Neither of her contestants responded to her. She wondered briefly if she should push it. Maybe ask them what their types actually are. The audience would eat that up like animals, but the looks on their faces rendered her merciful. Ah, young love. Come on, heroes. 9 out of 10 is still a record breaker. No need to look so glum. You both have effectively won the game, which means you win those surprise gifts from the audience. Instantly, the studio lights flooded the room once more, and confetti fell ceremoniously from above. Izuku didn't really hear the applause or whatever Hanazawa was saying next. He couldn't really quell the trembling in his fingers either. Kacchan's type. Out of all the questions. Izuku blinked as a box as tall as himself was shoved into his arms, and a small one was placed into Kacchan's hands by 2 staff members. He registered Hanazawa's instruction to tear open the wrapping and show the camera, which he did so robotically. Huh. He got a coat hanger stand. This would be good for his mother. Kacchan was staring unimpressed at the mini electrical muscle massager in his box. Hanazawa was joking about how he could use it to ease up the tense muscles in his face, and Izuku saw the way Kacchan barely managed to restrain himself from blowing it up entirely at the comment. Forcing his all-might smile on his face one last time, he thanked Hanazawa for the prizes and waved goodbye at the crowd and the cameras. When the cameras stopped rolling, the studio quietly settled down as the crew readied themselves for the upcoming interviews. I know you boys must be disappointed, Hanazawa said, flopping down on the armchair tiredly in the other part of the studio. Her makeup artist knelt beside her chair, dabbing at her cheeks hurriedly for the next segment of the show. But you still broke our record. This game isn't easy, you know. There's a reason the record is 6. Whatever, Kacchan grumbled. He exchanged a look at Izuku. It's just a stupid game anyway. Izuku looked away immediately. Right. It's just a stupid game. By the time the group exited the building, it was already dusk. They didn't bother sticking around for the rest of the show, mostly because the mood was a little too forlorn for anyone's liking, but also partly because Uraraka and Ashido were running late for Hagakure's late birthday party and wanted to leave as soon as possible. Uraraka wrapped her hands around Izuku's neck as they descended into the car park, squeezing him tightly. Izuku knew she was feeling a little sorry for him, even if she was confused as to why Kacchan and him were acting so gloomy about the outcome of a game. He couldn't really give her an answer as to why, either. "Don't forget to call Sue later, all right?" Uraraka said, pulling back and giving Izuku's shoulders a squeeze. "You're the only one she can talk to about that new amphibian hero. The way she gushes about him reminds me too much of you. I just can't keep track of anything she's saying." Izuku smiled. "Sure thing, Uraraka." "Okay, we'll talk later then. Bye, Miss Midoriya-san. Thanks for the ride today." She smiled at Inko, saluted at Kacchan, who was watching her warily the whole time, and bounded after Ashido and Kirishima, who were rummaging through some bags in their car's trunk, probably checking to see if everything was there for Hagakure's gathering. Kirishima was grumbling a little about how he felt left out, and just dropping the two off before going back to his apartment alone, but Ashido distracted him with a smattering of kisses all over his face. He pulled away looking positively giddy, all poutiness forgotten, as he waved goodbye to Izuku, Kacchan, and Inko, and pulled out of the car park. Izuku thought he heard Kacchan whisper, "whipped," under his breath. "Katsuki-kun." They both turned towards Inko, who was standing quietly next to Izuku with the box with the coat hanger clutched awkwardly in her hands, since the box was towering over her. "Would you like a ride home since yours just left?" Honestly, Izuku thought he could never get tired of the way Kacchan acted so awkwardly around his mother. Izuku had told Inko all about their renewed friendship, and of course, Inko had understood and forgiven him. But it was always apparent that Kacchan had probably never expected her forgiveness. Sometimes, Izuku thought that Kacchan felt like he didn't deserve to be forgiven at all. Kacchan scratched the back of his neck. "No, thank you, Auntie. I was actually thinking of going to get some ramen or something and just go home after that." "Oh!" Inko seemed to positively light up at this, hands threading together. "In that case, the two of you should come over. It's been so long since we've had a meal together. I'll make you a nice—" Inko stopped abruptly, a flash of something flickering across her face. Izuku furrowed his brows. "You'll—" Inko's eyes flicked between the two of them before something finally dawned on her face. "Ah, silly me." Her hands moved slowly down to her hips, and a soft smile drew her lips up. "I'm actually meeting with, Mitsuki today. Wow, I completely forgot. Whoops. Old age, you know. Anyway, I'll be heading off then, but you two can go eat dinner together, all right?" Kacchan's nose scrunched up while Inko was talking, and Izuku appreciated that he was looking like his regular self again. "You're meeting with the hag?" he said distastefully. "She's the most wonderful hag I've ever had the pleasure of meeting," Inko replied easily. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Inko launched herself at her son, holding him tightly with her face pressed into his chest. Izuku startled a little, but quickly enveloped her in a warm hug. He pressed his face into his mother's hair, closing his eyes briefly at her comforting touch. She was always so... Why was she crying? Izuku pulled back to ask if something was wrong, but Inko had extracted herself from Izuku's grip in favor of launching herself at Kacchan. The blonde was not so quick to return the favor. He shot a look at Izuku over Inko's head, the question obvious in his eyes. "Why is she fucking hugging me? Deku, get her off me." He just shrugged in response, just as lost. Inko was hugging Kacchan for much longer than was usual. When she pulled back, she dabbed at her eyes quickly. "Ah, they grow up so fast," she mumbled. Kacchan had never looked more confused. "Auntie." Inko looked up at him with a watery smile before placing an arm on his shoulder. "You take good care of my Izu, all right?" His eyes flicked over to Izuku's. "I'm sure he'll be fine. It's just ramen." Inko snorted. Yes, it's just ramen, she repeated, a little cryptic. Then, taking Izuku's right hand in Kacchan's left, Inko squeezed their palms. After everything you two have been through together, I'm so very proud of the both of you, and I will support you no matter what. I hope you know that. When his mother's tiny car skidded speedily out of the parking lot, Inko was not a slow driver, so to speak. The two of them watched her go in a bemused gaze. Some mother you got there, Deku. He huffed out a laugh. That's probably why she gets along so well with yours. Kacchan smirked. Like mother, like son. Startled, Izuku's eyes darted up to look at Kacchan. The blonde was looking right back, the smirk still in place. When did this parking lot get so warm? A few months ago, Kacchan and he had discovered a small roadside ramen shop situated at the back of Kacchan's apartment block. The food was killer, but it was more importantly secluded and hidden away in a nondescript alley, safe from civilian eyes. It also offered a sort of shortcut into the park leading towards Kacchan's house, so at least it was in walking distance and they didn't have to use their quirks to jump over roofs just to get home. As the sun finally sank into the horizon, the two of them sat side by side on the bar stools in front of the nearly empty kitchen, bowls of steaming ramen half-eaten before them. The place was practically deserted, apart from the two heroes, and the young woman busying herself by preparing the kitchen for the next day. Yeah, apparently jellyfish only live for 1 year, Izuku was saying, one chopstick poking at his cheek. I don't know why I thought it would be for longer than that, but I guess it makes sense if you think about it. Shoving another mouthful of noodles in his mouth, Kacchan pulled a face. It should be 0 years. Kacchan, you really need to get over that day on the beach. The fuck? Maybe you should get over your fear of freaking flowers, damn hypocrite. Jellyfish are so much deadlier than a damn leaf, and creepy fuckers don't even have brains. Izuku hummed, amused. Fair enough. A silence fell on them as they ate, and suddenly it was becoming apparent that they were both avoiding the elephant in the room. They simultaneously put their chopsticks down and turned to each other, the words already on their lips. So what exactly... Deku, what is... They stopped, blinked, looked away. Kacchan craned his neck up to stare at the ceiling. Christ, Deku, have we always been like this? What do you mean? The blonde turned to look at him, waving a hand incredulously between them. Like this, talking at the same time like a couple of freaky fucking twins. It's so annoying. Izuku thought about it for a second, before shrugging and absently picking at his food again. Don't know. Nothing really feels any different, so maybe it's just that we notice it more now because of the show. Kacchan grunted. Right, about that. What is your type? Neither of them noticed the way the woman in the kitchen paused mid-bend as she picked up a box of green onions to listen in. Could you really blame her? Practically everyone in Musutafu had been watching Heroes Rising tonight. Izuku's ears burned at the bluntness of his friend's words. I like people who are named Kacchan or Bakugo Katsuki, actually. Just give me a mean, spiky-haired childhood friend who can practically be an extension of me in battle. It's not a hard requirement to meet. Well, why don't you try to guess? Kacchan snorted, eyes concentrated as he balanced pieces of chili on his noodles before eating them. Right, because apparently I'd know the answer to that. Wordlessly, Izuku dropped the pieces of chili from his own bowl into Kacchan's, to which the blonde grunted a thanks at. Well, try to get something other than brown hair, then. Speaking of, why did you even... Didn't you have a thing for round face in high school? Izuku's cheeks flamed. K- Kacchan, that was literally in first year, and wow, that feels so long ago. I can't believe you even remembered that. But anyway, super outdated. So, what? Kacchan talked from around his food, which he knew would annoy Izuku. You got a thing for happy-go-lucky balls of sunshine or something? Every fiber of Izuku's being fought not to laugh at that. Not really, he said, the smile escaping him anyway. You like him quiet and boring, then? What on earth was Kacchan? Oh. You're talking about Todoroki-kun, aren't you? Kacchan scowled, stabbing his ramen as he grumbled. Duh. Nobody more boring than that half-and-half motherfucker. Still scowling, Kacchan's voice got quieter and quieter the more he grumbled. I bet he eats quadratic formulas for dinner, then proceeds to watch lame, boring-ass videos of fucking how to make a doorknob or something. I think how it's made episodes are interesting, actually. Okay. He chewed thoughtfully. So you do like boring-ass... Izuku rolled his eyes and poked Kacchan in the shoulder with a chopstick. Stop calling him that. I know you're his friend. And no, I'm not into him like that. He paused, contemplating the thought. He is very pretty, though. Izuku was already reaching for another chopstick from the tray in front of them as the ones in Kacchan's hands snapped in half. Geez, Kacchan, you're so wound up today. Also, sorry to make you guess like that. I guess the real answer is that I don't really have a type. Or, I don't know. It's not something I've ever really thought about. It's not something I've ever had the need to think about. Figures, Kacchan said, a little vaguely. Anyway, guess my type then. Izuku's mood dampened at this. Even though he should have expected it from asking Kacchan in the first place, he really didn't want to do this. But of course, Kacchan was fixing him with one of his signature intense stares, so Izuku really couldn't squirm his way out of it. You like strong guys? The fuck, Deku, obviously, that's low-hanging fruit. Excuse me, Izuku frowned. That's so much better than just brown hair and someone who's boring. At least mine makes sense and relates to your character. Sensing the threat of defeat, Kacchan shrugged it off. Whatever, just keep going. Okay. Izuku breathed in, ate a bit more, and swallowed thoughtfully. You'd like someone who's got a really badass quirk or something. Maybe they were prodigies when they were children too, just like you. And they honed their power over the years so they could be the greatest hero. It could be anyone from UA, actually, since you'd only go for the best of the best. And I guess they won't be annoying. I know you hate how annoying I am, so they'd have to be more than just tolerable. Not that anyone in particular comes to mind, since everyone seems to annoy you. Kacchan said nothing for a while, having taken a great interest in the egg floating in his broth. Izuku internally gave himself a moment to laugh at the way Kacchan always saved the egg for last, before he nervously looked back at his face. Was I, close? The egg disappeared inside Kacchan's mouth. Not really, he said, muffled from around the food. Kacchan was still avoiding his eyes, it seemed. Izuku blinked. Oh. Huh. He really thought he had hit it on the nail there. Looking up at the clock, Izuku hummed when he realized it was nearly 10 p.m. It was a wonder, really, how Kacchan was managing to stay awake at this time for non-hero work-related purposes. Anyway, we should probably leave soon. We don't want to make this nice lady work overtime for our sake. Kacchan grunted a yeah, and the two of them were scraping their chairs back as they stood up. Izuku bowed and quickly thanked the woman in the kitchen, who had paused her work to bid the heroes goodbye, and then they were stepping out into the night. As they stopped by the street, Izuku hesitated by the mouth of the alleyway. Uh, are you headed home now, Kacchan? Yep. They just stood there awkwardly for some seconds too long. Izuku really didn't want to say goodbye so early. He really, really wanted to just stay by Kacchan's side for a while longer. The latter seemed to be having the same thought, as he hadn't ditched Izuku to leave. In fact, he was just bouncing side to side on his heels. Well, see you later then, Deku. Yeah, Izuku sighed, deflating. Later, Kacchan. Smiling at his friend one last time, Izuku turned on his heel and began to walk in the other direction. Just as he was beginning to activate his quirk so he could leap over the buildings, Kacchan swore quietly behind him. Deku, wait. Izuku, ever so honed into Kacchan's every move, paused immediately to turn around. The green electricity emanating from his body dissipated immediately. Yes, Kacchan. With one hand stuffed into his pocket, and the other gripping his neck, Kacchan didn't meet his eyes when he said, Did you want to, hang out? At my place? Yes! Izuku beamed, bounding up to Kacchan immediately. Upon seeing the blonde raise an eyebrow at the excitement, Izuku sheepishly tried to dial down his wild expression. Yikes. Talk about looking desperate. I mean, yeah. We can watch that Miss Joke sitcom together, if you want. Apparently they released a special episode last week, but I was so swamped with work that it completely slipped my mind, and I haven't gotten the chance to see it. Izuku rambled on like that as they crossed the street and made their way into the empty park, which was the shortest route to Kacchan's apartment district. The trail they were walking down was surprisingly well lit, considering the budget for this part of town. When mosquitoes started nipping at Kacchan's neck, the scent of nitroglycerin permeated the air as Kacchan launched into several variations of die and eat shit, you insect bastards, as he blasted with scary accuracy at barely visible flying insects. Just the sight of it was enough to send Izuku into a laughing fit, doubling over instantly as the giggles took hold of him. When he looked back up, wiping at his eyes, Kacchan had lowered his arms and was looking at him with a strange expression. It came out as a sigh. Deku. I actually do have a type. Izuku stopped walking, heart dropping into his stomach. His friend followed suit, hands burrowing themselves in his pockets again. You do? He nodded, looking a little out of his depth. Izuku could tell, because his jaw was tight, his shoulders angled away from him, his eyes trained downwards. To the reasonable observer, Kacchan would have looked bored, aloof, a little contemplative. But Izuku could see right through it. Yeah. Kacchan was sounding less sure of himself now. Despite the uncertainty, he pressed on. I do like strong guys. You were right about that. Strong enough that it scares me a little. Makes me realize that maybe I'm not... that I've still got a lot left to prove. But it's fine because it keeps me on my toes. He breathed in deeply, tilting his head to the side. It's fine, because I know that no matter what happens, they'll always be by my side, even when I'm fucking everything up, because... He swallowed tightly. Because they've seen all the worst parts of me, and they're still there. They're still fucking there. Despite everything, they've made it clear that they're never even going to leave now that they've gotten so far. I think my type is someone who's so goddamn self-sacrificial and forgiving that it grates on my fucking nerves. Someone who sprinted at me because they saw me in danger, even though they were fucking quirkless, and I was nothing but an exceptional asshole to them the entire time. Someone who looks at me like I hung the stars for them, even before things got better between us because he's apparently a masochistic little shit. Kacchan took in a shaky breath. finally risking a glance over at Izuku. Izuku, who had said nothing, whose face was betraying nothing. Under the streetlight, Izuku looked utterly expressionless, apart from his widened, transfixed eyes. For what felt like eternity, they remained locked in each other's stare. Until finally, the silence became unbearable. Deku. Izuku opened his mouth but found no words. The rest of the thoughts lodged themselves painfully in his throat. He could barely hear anything past the ringing in his ears. Kacchan recoiled, as if he'd been struck, whipping backwards as rejection painted itself all over his face. Right, well, And then the world came suddenly rushing back in, the crisp autumn air clearing the clutter in his head. I have a type 2. Izuku didn't look at him. Silence. Okay. Kacchan rolled his shoulders back, that dejected expression never leaving. What is it? Izuku raised his arms, trying to articulate, with the help of his very coherent hand gestures. Temperamental, apparently, and a little emotionally constipated, but it's okay because that's just who they are, and it's definitely not as bad as it used to be. I've always been used to it too, so it's not something I couldn't handle anyway, and, I guess I like them strong too, a true hero who can win to save, and always have my back in battle, and keep me grounded when I'm panicking, and give me those little private smiles that are so rare, but they're so special to me, and, Izuku cut himself off at the absolutely floored expression Kacchan was giving him. Those red eyes round with surprise. Should he make it clearer? They know me really well. Childhood friends, red eyes, last name Bakugo, first name, you know I can't say it. Kacchan, do you get what I'm trying to... Kacchan held Deku's chin with his thumb and forefinger, looming over him. Deku, he said roughly, eyes dropping to Izuku's lips. Let's stop beating around the bush. Heat rushed to Izuku's face as he nodded vigorously. The streetlight above them was haloing Kacchan in a golden light, and Izuku thought that maybe the roof had collapsed over Hanazawa's studio, and he had died and was now living his best life in heaven, because there's no way Kacchan could ever be looking at him like that. But then he was moving forward, and Kacchan was leaning in, and when their lips met in the middle, Izuku was certain that he'd never felt anything more real. He took Kacchan's face in his hands, reveling in the softness of his skin and the realization that he's known him all his life, but he's never known just how tender Kacchan's lips could be. He shuddered at the thought that he still had so much left to learn about him, that there was still so much left to explore. Izuku became weightless and untethered, Kacchan holding him down like a lifeline, those warm hands pressed insistently against Izuku's back, pulling him in impossibly closer. It's only when Kacchan began sliding his tongue in between Izuku's lips to kiss him more deeply that Izuku pulled away, breathless. Crimson eyes stared back at him, but the sheer lack of distance between their faces was making Izuku cross-eyed. Wait, Kacchan? He asked, cringing at the way his voice sounded absolutely ragged. Kacchan took a second to just look at him, probably admiring his handiwork. He kissed the corner of Izuku's lips as if he couldn't really help himself. What? Izuku was comforted to hear that Kacchan sounded just as wrecked. Does this mean you like me? Oh my fucking god. Kacchan pulled back, his expression melting into annoyance again. You are the dumbest motherfucker to ever walk the earth, I swear to God, Deku. Izuku blinked. Saying things like that is not really helping your case, Kacchan. Kacchan just shut his eyes for a quick second at this, mouth twisting briefly into one of his rare smiles, his expression uncharacteristically fond. Look, I don't go around confessing my feelings and kissing people in a park like some fucking sap to just anyone. Then, brushing a stray curl away from Izuku's forehead, he tacked on a truly affectionate, "Dumbass." The words made Izuku feel instantly giddy, and the goofy smile on his face did absolutely nothing to hide it. "I'd really hope not," he whispered, going on his tippy toes to kiss him on the cheek. "I would have some choice words for them." "Jealous much?" And then he was pulling him in again, drinking Izuku in like he couldn't get enough. "Oi," he said, in between kisses, his voice lower than normal. "You'd better not still be thinking of watching that lame TV show when we get back to my place." "Kacchan!" Izuku didn't know what he looked like, but judging from how unbearably hot his face was, he knew he looked positively crimson. "Eager much?" "Shut up. I've wanted this for so long." He finally broke away, stepping back slightly. "Unless, you don't want to—" "No!" Izuku immediately grabbed onto Kacchan's hand, interlacing their fingers and giving him a reassuring squeeze. The warmth of his hand sent tingles down Izuku's spine, which in turn only made him smile wider. "I mean, I do want to, but, I'm just saying that we could, you know, multitask too." When it clicked in Kacchan's head, he groaned and buried his face in his free hand. "I'm not having sex with you with a fucking Miss Joke show playing in the background. What the fuck? Why am I so attracted to you? I want a refund." Laughing, Izuku practically skipped all the way to Kacchan's house. "I'm just joking, Kacchan, jeez." Half joking, but he doesn't need to know that. They might not have won the game show, but by the end of the night, they had bared themselves so openly to one another that there were finally, no more secrets left between them. All right, listeners, this concludes the one-shot entitled What's Your Type? I love this fanfic a lot. I think the author does an incredible job with the characterization in this one. We've got aged up characters, as heroes, and how the relationship is developed between Izuku and Bakugo to get to the point where, they're here, right? They know each other inside and out, that throwback to their childhood friendship and how the two of them had managed to even progress past the show and past the canon material that Horikoshi created. So I'm really curious to hear what you all thought of this one. It's one I find myself going back to and rereading because it's got a great mesh of fluff in there. I think the author puts it together so well. It's just creative, it's funny. So please drop your comments below. Let me know your reactions, your thoughts. Was this the first time you'd been exposed to this fic? Did you already know about it, but you're just now listening to it? I'm really curious about how people get to the channel and how they know the fanfics that I read on here. This one is one that I think has a decent fan base. I think a lot of people were aware of it already, but I'm just curious about how you knew about it. Did you find it here for the first time? And what did you think, right? If this was the first time you were exposed to it, and if you already knew the fic, right? If you'd read it before, how did you feel about how it was maybe brought to life in a different way through a podfic? So your guys' comments really do, help me out. It gives me an understanding of your perspective on things. So anyways, that's enough rambling from me. I hope you all enjoyed it. You can slide over to AO3 if you'd like and leave the comments, kudos, support to the original author. I'm sure it's much appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.